what we want to do is look at use cases for leveraging Copilot for security with Microsoft Purview. For this exercise, you're logged in as Avery Howard, and you have Copilot owner role, and you have specific role permissions required to access Purview solutions. You'll work with some specific Purview solutions using the new Purview portal and access the embedded Copilot capabilities for these solutions. The first thing we'll need to do is we need to enable the Purview plugin. All right, so from the Copilot for Security landing page, what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down to the prompt bar and we're going to go to our sources. All right. In our sources, what we want to do is first of all expand out the additional sources that we have here where it says show 11 more. And what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and scroll down to the Purview source. So if we'll scroll down, you'll see Purview. Okay. Now, there is an information icon located here, and it tells you the plugin is currently unavailable due to restricted access to M365 services and data. Go to the owner settings to allow page access. What we need to do before we can use Purview is we have to give Copilot 365 access to M365 services. It's a data sharing thing. So I'll close that and I'll go back up to my home menu and I want to go down to owner settings. In owner settings, there's a very specific switch to allow Copilot for security access to data from your M365 services. Note if you click the little information icon, it actually tells you you won't be able to use any of the plugins that leverage or access Microsoft 365 services without this toggle switch being turned on. So I'll turn that toggle switch on. All right, so now that it's enabled, now I should be able to go in and turn that plugin on. So I'll go back here, all right, to the Copilot for Security page. And what I'll do is I'll go back down to the prompt bar, click on my sources, show 11 more, and what you'll see now is there's no limitation or warning for Purview. So I'll toggle the Purview switch on. That'll allow me to close that object, all right? So that capacity in Security for Copilot now allows me to use the embedded functionality of Copilot for Security in Purview. So from this point, we're going to be working in Purview to see what now capabilities I have available for me. What we want to do is look at how can I summarize risks that I get from Purview. One of the things that we often find we need to work on is insider risk management. So what we want to see is how can I look at insider risk management alerts in Purview and what Copilot will give me about that. All right, so let's go over here to Purview. Now, once again, we're assuming in this case that we have the appropriate permissions for the user and that they can access data in Purview. To access any data associated with Purview Insider Risk Management, the Copilot user would have to have previously been assigned that role. So we're over here now in the Purview portal. You see the welcome screen. We've agreed to the licensing, we've set up Purview, and we've gone ahead and done the try now option. So now what we can do is we want to go through and view the solutions associated with this. So you can see this gives me visibility across Microsoft 365, across Azure, and across Fabric. Those are there. So from the Purview portal, what I want to do is I want to focus on insider risk management. So you can see that tile listed right here. So I click Insider Risk Management. And what I want to do is I want to see any alerts that are governed by this. So over here on the right, left, you'll see alerts. And we click on the alerts there. All right. Now, there's an alert based around potential data theft based on a departing employee. That could be pretty significant. So what I want to do is I want to see the details associated with that. It shows me the user, the sensitivity, when it happened, when it was assigned, and any case associated with this. So what I'll do is I'll select this alert, and what this does is this provides a breakdown. Now you can see the severity level is 100 out of 100, so it's very high. It'll show me a number of events associated with this. It shows me what triggered the event. It'll show me any user details associated with this and the alert history associated with the object. Now, if you look at the Activity Explorer tab, this gives me kind of a breakdown of the kind of alert story. You'll see like the timeline of events associated with this risky user, a file that was accessed, other text files that were used. All these are potentially associated with a user that's no longer should be working within our environment. All right, so the first file on the list here, you can see file accessed on SPO. So if I click on that, I can see when it happened, the date it occurred, it's a SharePoint file, what the file was, the URL, the file architecture, it's like non-disclosure agreement. You can see like values associated with this and the confidence level. What we're seeing is this is a classic potential insider risk environment. Okay? If I look at the user activity tab, you can see kind of a diagram, sort of like almost like a scatter plot of like 1, 3, and 6 month intervals. Let me pull up, break that data down. All right, of user activity. So if I look at this in a 6 month window, I can kind of see that alert data across this page. So all of this is a way of me being able to see that, hey, this alert possibly is a significant loss or a significant breach of data. So what I want to do is I want to be able to digest all this. And this is once again where Copilot for Security can help me. So instead of trying to navigate through all of these risk factors, all this activity, I can just use the summarize icon in Copilot. So now that I have the embedded Copilot experience, I click summarize, and summarize gives me key details about this event. It'll give me an alert severity. It'll give me user details about the alert. It'll give me an alert summary and much more. This helps me accelerate investigations by helping me quickly gain context into the user intent and the timing of the user activities. This allows me to create tailored investigations with specific dates in mind and pinpoint sensitive files at risk. So what I can do now is go back to the main Purview portal. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to get visibility into this alert and then associate it with or assign it to the appropriate team members that can best respond to this. So what we started by reviewing the alert itself. Remember, we don't need Copilot to figure out that there's a problem, but what Copilot can do is evaluate the potential risks involved with the problem. And as always, keep in mind that Copilot assumes the permissions of the user when it tries to access data for queries. So it's important to remember that Copilot doesn't substitute for you having visibility or availability to view things in Purview. Oftentimes, the person running Copilot might not be the person that has full visibility into the data that we need to have access to. So being able to share or delegate this results to the appropriate people is important. Okay. Now, so what we want to do is from the Purview section, once again, under, in this case, we'll go back to Home. In this case, I'm going to go into Data Loss Prevention. In our Data Loss Prevention, I'm going to go into Alerts. Now, this can be even more overwhelming. There's a large number of sources to analyze. There's apps, there's cloud services, there's emails, there's endpoints, there's chats, there's different rules, there's different policy conditions. There's all kinds of stuff that may be factors in determining the relative impact of a potential threat. Having to distill all this as an analyst is a daunting task. So let's say if I'm a data loss prevention professional, that I see this match for a cardholder transaction log document in OneDrive. We probably don't want someone downloading cardholder transactions to an Excel spreadsheet. So that might be a problem. So if I choose that alert, what I immediately get is the overview. And this is the basic DLP overview of that. It shows me the policy match, the location, the user involved, and so on. If I want to get into the details, I can pull up the specific details of that event. Now notice it opens this in a new browser tab. So now, this is that overview. If I go into the events, I can see all the events and I can see the details associated with them. So I can view like what entities are impacted. I can see under classifiers, I can see what sensitive information type this was used. If I go under file activity, I can see file access, file downloaded, sharing was set for the file, sharing inheritance was broken, file sensitivity labels being applied. I can see all of that. That's still buried under all these individual tabs. What I want to do is I want to be able to digest this information kind of more succinctly. I'd like to be able to view this information kind of more robustly. So let's go back. Let's go back to our alert. And remember, one of the things that we're able to do with alerts like this, we're able to summarize this information in Copilot. So let's go ahead and pull this same alert back up. So you've seen all the detail that's incorporated within this alert. Let's just click on Summarize with Copilot. What Copilot will then do is do a comprehensive summary. These are all the key details, the policy rules that are associated with this. It pulls in user risk levels from Insider Risk Management, and it's also able to evaluate the information within that summary. So these give you a better starting point now for a baseline for what you want to evaluate. So let's go back to the main portal in Purview. So let's start back here at the Purview home. Now, we've looked at Insider Risk Management. We've looked at data loss prevention. What if we want to do like more kind of contextual things? Let's look at how Copilot can evaluate compliance, looking at like comms potential violations. That's a very detailed, time-consuming process, especially if we're looking at like meeting transcripts or email attachments, Teams attachments, any kind of long-form text. What Copilot can do is it can do that quickly, and it can do it literally at the click of a button. As with always, it doesn't provide you with any additional permissions to do what you do. So you still need communication compliance permissions, and you still need to be a user with access to that data. But as you'll see, Copilot can once again help make your environment more effective. All right. So what we want to do is over here on our new Purview portal, you'll see there's a little link to View All Solutions. So if I click on that, from there we're going to select Communication Compliance. All right. Once we have Communication Compliance selected, we'll go here on the left to Policies. All right. And from Policies, we want to select Regulatory Compliance. All right. Now, from here, what we'll see, these are a list of violations triggered by this policy. What we want to do is select the one that says, Happy New Year, valued customers. All right. Now, what you see from that is the communication compliance policy is able to pinpoint the timestamps when a potential violation has occurred. It can also highlight what conditions are matched, but there's still a good bit of text to read through. With Copilot Security, you can get a comprehensive summary of an alert with a single click of a button. So what we're going to do is we're going to select Summarize. And what you do is you get Copilot to summarize that. You can also ask follow-up questions. You can copy paste to, for example, does this violation indicate unauthorized disclosure? So you can see there's, like, for example, does this violation indicate unauthorized disclosure? Okay. And as I said before, Copilot doesn't even require you to type text accurately. But what it can do is it can go ahead and ask that, and it can respond to that. And it tells you, in this case, it doesn't, or it does. It does seem to indicate a potential case of unauthorized disclosure, as the speaker is sharing information about an upcoming merger of PSL. Okay? So here's where we get to be able to view and evaluate content. How much digging would it take for me to have to go through this particular message to find out if it matched that criteria? Where literally I can have Copilot do that at a click of a button. Again, how much time does that save me, and how quickly then can I respond to this potential breach of compliance? All right, so if I go back up to the home menu, the last thing we want to look at with this is eDiscovery. How can I get a summary of things collected by eDiscovery? We're going to use Copilot in Purview to summarize all the evidence collected in a review set. If you think about if you're investigating a large set of data, that can take hours, days, or even weeks to sift through. You can look at all the information you used in a discovery review set within Purview. This requires a lot of time. Sometimes you have to go to outside counsel to help to manually go through each document to determine whether or not it's relevant to a legal case or not. Copilot, once again, can reduce that burden by generating summaries of the conversations of varied languages and the documents that may be included as attachments. Copilot assumes the permissions of the user. Once again, I can't emphasize that enough, that Copilot doesn't have permissions beyond what you have. So we always want to make sure that the person using the tool and using the analysis has permissions to the underlying data. So in this case, you need permission to view the underlying eDiscovery solution data. So here, I'm going to go back to the Purview main page. We're going to view all solutions. And in this case, I'm going to go into eDiscovery. Once I have eDiscovery, you'll see I'm taken to the summary page for your cases. From the cases page, when I look at this Contoso stock manipulation, all right, I'll select that. And then what I'm going to do is hop over to the Review Sets tab. From here, I want to look at the review set listed stock manipulation teams. So it's RS stock manipulations teams and cloud attachments. And once again, what this does is it allows me to review documents that are associated with this. Now, by using the filter for Teams conversations, we could input a filter. A filter we can specify, for example, file class, right, to help narrow down our results. So choose file class, and then from operator, I'll say any of, and then any conversation. All right. And what that does is that gives me a list of conversations. From that list, I can choose this first conversation, which I can look at and kind of view sort of the source history about it. And I can see, if I close this window up, you know, like what the event that was caused, you know, the conversation strings, various information about from a partner call. And you can see this conversation history about an acquisition. This is all potentially things that were here. There's quite a bit of text though in this conversation. It would take me a good bit to kind of go through all that. Well, you know who's going to come to help us, right? Copilot for Security. Because we've onboarded the Purview connector, we've got this summarize option. So now what I can do is summarize all of that information. I can also prompt it for suggestions for what do I want to look for? What am I having? But you can see it tells me in the summary, they discuss a confidential acquisition of two companies, Bitdefender and FrostVision by another company, Contoso. It says that one person shared insider information with another, suggesting the acquisition will cause a surge in Contoso's stock. In response, this person is going to liquidate their shares of Contoso and invest in the other. They both agree to keep the information secret and split the profits. That's kind of a big deal. But once again, how long would it take me to digest that by going through line by line this conversation? What I was able to do is to flag that information and then have Copilot do that information more effectively. So let's go back. Let's back up here. Let's go to another conversation. So here, notice this conversation is not in English. All right, so what I'm able to do, like the original text here, is not there. It's a common challenge when we're working with multinational corporations where people speak various languages. The original document you can see showed as not being in English. So once again, what I can do is I can select the document and then select Summarize. And what I can do is I can get an English language summary of the document, which is the default language of Copilot. Within Teams, you also have the ability to send like cloud attachments, which are links to documents. So if I expand out this item, the first sub-item you see is a Word document, all right? You can see it's the acquisition memorandum here. What I can do is I can select that document, all right, and ask it to, once again, taking this non-English document, I can ask it to summarize that. And then once again, even though the originating document or the originating resource that I'm looking at is not in English, I can get the summary in the native language of Copilot, which in this case is English. So once again, we're looking at managing insider risk, managing the kind of things that as a data loss prevention specialist would be important to me. Saving me the time of having to go through this with a fine-tooth comb, I can leverage Copilot's capability to be able to summarize things more efficiently. All right. The other things we could do are doing keyword searches, especially keyword query language searches using natural language. One of the things we always talk about is being able to leverage knowledge. So a lot of the things we can do to glean information out requires some specific knowledge or a specific knowledge set. I may know what I want to do, but I don't have the underlying, for example, in this case, KQL language to be able to create what I want. In this case, I can use Copilot for securities, keyword language queries natural language process to be able to provide that. I can allow users to be able to generate a query in KQL language to make search iterations in eDiscovery more accurate. So now analysts at all levels can conduct advanced investigations using KQL. So once again, here we are in the Purview portal. We're going to go to View All Solutions, and we're going to go back into eDiscovery. And we're then going to select eDiscovery from beneath Risk and Compliance. What we want to do is we want to find the Fabricam versus Contoso case. So we're going to select that, all right? And you'll see there's a Create Search option here. We're going to give the search a name. We're going to call it My Search. Okay. We could enter a description, a search demo. And then we're going to go ahead and create that. Now to that search, we need to add a data source. So if we wanted here to add data sources, we could then choose from the data sources that we manage. Now, if I'm looking here, I'm going to type in sales in the search bar, and I find sales object there, and I'll go ahead and save that. Okay. So what I have now is a source tool and a mechanism for or a parameter that I want to search under. Now, if I knew query language, I could author this effectively. But what if I'm not so good at that? Well, there's a query with Copilot. So what I can do now is I could have Copilot respond to me and generate query language output that I can use. So you'll see there's two boxes. There's the KQL result box, and there's the natural language prompt. This is where I could start beginning figuring out how to share what I want the KQL to be able to evaluate. So this is a great starting point. I could look at a suggested list of prompts to determine how to craft a natural language query for my suggested prompts. For example, if you go to View Prompts, you can see there's find all emails containing the words budget and finance and have attachments, or search all chats in the month of January. So let me choose that. If I click that, I can then say generate KQL. And what it'll do is it'll translate the natural language process, the natural language statement that I made, into the KQL statement that I'll use for that. All right. Say you've been told that you need to find all conversations related to a recent acquisition. You could put into the language prompt something like this: find all conversations that contain the keywords acquisition, stock, Bitdefender, FrostVision, and offshore. You can then have Copilot refine the query to ensure a more accurate result. You select refine. Okay. So it looks at the prompt and says, well, is there a better way for you to write this so that I can then get the appropriate KQL? And you can see it's made some formatting, little notes, put quotation marks around elements, added an or statement. I can then accept that and then generate my KQL from that. Copilot then generates that query within seconds. Now I have code that I could then copy and use in eDiscovery to run or to evaluate that. So in your production environment, now you just copy that KQL code into the run box, select run, and now you're ready to evaluate. All right. What you've seen in this section is how Copilot in Microsoft Purview can evaluate data security and compliance. It allows admins to use the power of AI to assess risk exposure more quickly than is otherwise possible. You can do it directly within the Purview solution. You've also been able to explore the functionality of Copilot to aid in compliance investigations, with data loss prevention, with insider risk management, with communication compliance, and eDiscovery.